In the serene town of Lörrach, Baden-Württemberg, Germany, life moved at a tranquil pace. Nestled in the scenic landscapes of the Black Forest, Lörrach was a haven of quiet neighborhoods, family-run businesses, and a close-knit community. But on September 19, 2010, this idyllic town was plunged into terror. A day of horror unfolded, led by a woman whose name would become synonymous with one of Germany's most shocking crimes, Sabine Radmacher. This is the story of a woman consumed by rage and despair, whose path of destruction turned a peaceful town into a scene of chaos and tragedy. Born in 1964 in southern Germany, Sabine Radmacher grew up in a modest household. Her parents were hardworking and provided a stable, albeit strict, upbringing. Those who knew her as a child described her as introverted and somewhat detached. She excelled academically but struggled socially, often withdrawing into herself rather than engaging with her peers. By the time Sabine reached adulthood, she had carved out a promising career as a lawyer. She was known for her sharp intellect and unwavering dedication to her clients. However, beneath the professional exterior was a woman battling inner turmoil. Her relationships were marked by volatility and emotional intensity. Friends and colleagues noted her perfectionism, but this trait often spilled over into an inability to cope with failure or rejection. Sabine married Dieter Radmacher in the late 1990s. Their relationship, initially filled with passion and mutual admiration, quickly began to unravel. Dieter was a charismatic and outgoing man who seemed to complement Sabine's reserved nature. However, their differences soon became points of contention. Arguments over finances, career priorities, and lifestyle choices became a daily occurrence. By 2010, their marriage was in tatters. Dieter had moved on, finding solace in a new relationship with a younger woman. For Sabine, the divorce was more than a personal failure, it was a humiliation she could not bear. She became fixated on her ex-husband, obsessing over the perceived injustices she had suffered. The sight of Dieter happy with someone else was a constant reminder of her own unhappiness. Sabine's behavior became increasingly erratic in the months leading up to the tragedy. She isolated herself from friends and colleagues, spending hours alone, ruminating over her failed marriage. Her fixation turned into a toxic cocktail of rage and despair, and she began to plot a twisted form of retribution. The morning of September 19, 2010, began like any other Sunday in Lörrach. Families attended church, strolled through parks, and prepared for the week ahead. But for Sabine, this was the day she would exact her revenge. Sabine arrived at the apartment she had once shared with Dieter, armed with a pistol and a deep-seated anger that had festered for months. Inside, Dieter and his new partner were enjoying a quiet morning, unaware of the storm about to erupt. Sabine confronted the couple, her voice trembling with rage. An argument quickly escalated into violence. In a fit of uncontrollable fury, Sabine shot both Dieter and his partner at point-blank range. The once familiar apartment was now a scene of unspeakable horror, its walls bearing the marks of her wrath. But Sabine was not finished. Determined to erase all evidence of her crime, she set the apartment ablaze. The fire spread rapidly, consuming the unit and threatening the lives of the other residents in the building. As smoke billowed into the sky, the building's residents scrambled to escape. Some rushed down stairwells, their faces covered in soot, while others leaned out of windows, screaming for help. The fire department arrived quickly, battling the inferno as terrified onlookers gathered in the street. Unbeknownst to the firefighters, Sabine had slipped away from the scene. The fire was a calculated distraction, giving her time to carry out the next phase of her deadly plan. While emergency responders focused on containing the blaze, Sabine made her way to St. Elisabethan Hospital, just a few kilometers away. St. Elisabethan Hospital was a bustling facility that Sunday afternoon. Doctors attended to patients, nurses rushed between rooms, and families visited their loved ones. Into this scene of routine care and healing walked Sabine, carrying the same pistol she had used earlier that day. Her face was a mask of cold determination, her mind fixed on a mission of destruction. Sabine's first victim at the hospital was a male nurse who crossed her path in the hallway. She shot him without hesitation, sending staff and patients into a frenzy. Panic spread like wildfire as the sound of gunshots echoed through the building. People ran in all directions, some hiding under desks, others barricading themselves in rooms. Sabine moved through the hospital with chilling precision, firing at anyone who came near her. Her actions were methodical, her expression devoid of emotion. It was as if she were carrying out a grim ritual, each pull of the trigger a release of the anger that had consumed her. Police, alerted by witnesses at the hospital, arrived within minutes. Armed officers cautiously entered the building, their weapons drawn. They found Sabine in one of the hospital corridors, her pistol still in hand. What followed was a tense standoff, with officers attempting to negotiate while Sabine refused to surrender. The confrontation lasted only a few minutes but felt like an eternity to those watching from the safety of nearby rooms. Sabine fired at the officers, forcing them to return fire. In the exchange, she was fatally shot, collapsing to the floor as her reign of terror came to an abrupt end. As the dust settled, investigators began piecing together the events of the day. The death toll stood at 3, including Dieter, his partner, and the hospital nurse. Several others were injured, and the emotional scars left on the survivors would take much longer to heal. The apartment fire was extinguished, but not before it had displaced dozens of residents. The building, once a quiet home to families and retirees, was now a charred reminder of Sabine's fury. In the weeks and months following the massacre, experts sought to understand what had driven Sabine to such extremes. Psychologists pointed to her inability to cope with loss and rejection, combined with a propensity for obsessive behavior. Her fixation on Dieter had created a distorted reality in which she saw herself as a victim deserving of revenge. The case also highlighted systemic failures. Sabine's deteriorating mental state had gone unnoticed by those around her, and her ability to obtain a firearm raised questions about Germany's gun control measures. These issues sparked a national conversation, but for the victims' families, no amount of discussion could bring back their loved ones. For the residents of Lorac, the events of September 19, 2010, remain a painful memory. Vigils were held for the victims, and the community came together to support those affected. But the sense of safety that once defined the town was forever altered. The hospital, a place of healing, bore the physical and emotional scars of the massacre. Staff who had witnessed the violence struggled to return to work, haunted by memories of that day. The apartment building, too, stood as a grim monument to Sabine's rage, its blackened walls a stark contrast to the surrounding neighborhood. Sabine Radmacher's story is a chilling reminder of the destructive power of unchecked emotions. Her actions left a trail of devastation that extended far beyond the lives she took. Families were shattered, a community was traumatized, and the illusion of tranquility in Lorac was forever broken. As the town continues to heal, the memory of that fateful day serves as a cautionary tale. It underscores the importance of mental health support, early intervention, and vigilance in recognizing the signs of a person in crisis. Sabine's name will forever be associated with one of the darkest chapters in Lorac's history. But from the ashes of her rampage, a renewed commitment to compassion and community has emerged, a testament to the resilience of those determined to move forward, even in the face of unimaginable horror. In the months and years that followed, the people of Lorac sought to reclaim their lives, though the specter of Sabine Radmacher's actions lingered. Survivors of the hospital shooting recounted their stories in interviews and local memorials, some finding solace in sharing their experiences, while others preferred silence, unable to confront the memories. The hospital underwent significant renovations, both to repair the physical damage and to erase the painful reminders of what had occurred. Yet, no amount of fresh paint or new furniture could remove the emotional scars from the staff who had witnessed the violence firsthand. Many nurses and doctors left their positions, haunted by the trauma, leaving a staffing crisis that further strained the community's resources. For those displaced by the apartment fire, rebuilding their lives became a long and arduous process. Some chose to move far away from Lorac, seeking a fresh start, while others, bound by financial or familial ties, stayed, determined to rebuild amid the memories of destruction. Counseling services were offered to help residents cope, and local leaders advocated for increased support systems to identify and intervene in cases of emotional and psychological distress. The shockwaves of Sabine's rampage extended far beyond Lorac. National debates erupted over Germany's gun control laws, which, while stringent compared to many other countries, were criticized for allowing individuals like Sabine to obtain a firearm. Proposals for tighter regulations gained momentum, with lawmakers advocating for stricter background checks and improved monitoring of firearm owners. Mental health advocacy also took center stage. Experts highlighted the need for accessible mental health care, particularly for individuals undergoing significant life changes, such as divorce or job loss. The tragedy served as a grim reminder of how untreated mental health issues could escalate into catastrophic violence. Community organizations in Baden-Württemberg began organizing workshops and awareness campaigns to educate the public about recognizing signs of psychological distress. Schools and workplaces implemented mental health programs, hoping to prevent similar tragedies in the future. While policies and programs shifted, the human cost of Sabine Radmacher's actions remained immeasurable. Families of the victims grappled with their grief, some turning to faith, others to activism, to cope with their losses. Memorials were erected in honor of those who lost their lives, including Dieter, his partner, and the hospital nurse whose dedication to saving lives was cruelly cut short. One particularly poignant story emerged from the survivors of the apartment fire. A single mother who had narrowly escaped with her 2 young children spoke of the haunting guilt she felt for not being able to save her elderly neighbor. Her children, once carefree, now woke up screaming from nightmares, their innocence stolen in the inferno that Sabine had ignited. At the hospital, patients who had hidden during the massacre found their recovery interrupted by the psychological trauma of that day. A cancer patient who had been undergoing treatment at the time of the shooting described how her fear of returning to the hospital delayed her treatment, exacerbating her condition. In academic circles, Sabine Radmacher became a case study for forensic psychologists and criminologists. Her actions were dissected in journal articles and lectures, with experts debating the factors that led her to commit such atrocities. Was she a victim of untreated mental illness, or did her rage stem purely from her inability to accept rejection and failure? Sabine's diaries, recovered from her apartment after her death, provided chilling insights into her mind. Pages filled with vitriolic rants against Dieter revealed the depth of her obsession. In her writings, she portrayed herself as a victim, convinced that the world had conspired against her. These entries painted a portrait of a woman spiraling into delusion, her sense of reality warped by her all-consuming anger. Her case became a touchstone for discussions about the intersections of personality disorders, domestic violence, and mass violence. It underscored the importance of early intervention, not just for the safety of the individual, but for the community at large. For Lorac, the events of September 19, 2010, remain a defining moment in the town's history. The community has slowly begun to heal, but the memory of that day will never be erased. Schools hold annual safety drills, and the town observes a moment of silence every September to honor the lives lost and the resilience of those who survived. The tragedy serves as a grim reminder of the fragility of peace and the potential for devastation lurking beneath seemingly ordinary lives. Sabine Radmacher's actions left an indelible mark on Lorac, but they also spurred a collective determination to ensure that her story would not be repeated. In the face of unimaginable horror, the people of Lorac found strength in each other, proving that even in the darkest of times, humanity's capacity for compassion and recovery can prevail.